For those that don't know me, I'm Ryan. I work with Randy at Financial Insurance Services of Texas, and we get a lot of questions about Social Security. And we met Tom a few years ago and really found value from his presentation. And so we thought that we would host Tom, and that day is today. So I'm going to provide a brief introduction about Tom and his credentials, and we're glad you're all here and expecting a lot of value out of the presentation. So Tom Clark is our Social Security expert. He has a 33-year history at the Social Security Administration in various roles. He retired in 2011, and he's now a self-employed Social Security speaker. Tom has made, fun fact, Tom has made more than 6,000 presentations about Social Security and is certified to give this presentation in his sleep. Tom has received numerous awards from his many years of service with the Social Security Administration, and he's written many publications with a monthly readership of over 2 million persons published in his columns about Social Security. Tom has produced and appeared in over 200 television shows about Social Security, and he's been considered an expert in explaining how receiving a pension based on work at something like the Texas Teachers Retirement System and how that can impact their Social Security payments. So with that introduction, we'd like to welcome Tom Clark to today's presentation.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. I worked for Social Security for 33 years, as you heard. During most of that time, I was a public affairs specialist. So this is a big part of that job, is presentations to all sorts and sizes of groups about Social Security and Medicare. I made more than 6,000 presentations, as you heard, when I worked at Social Security, the most of anybody in the history of the agency. Then a few years ago, as we baby boomers started reaching retirement age, and there's a bunch of us that pretty much doubled their workload there, while their staff was actually the lowest it's been since before the turn of the century. Pretty much all the resources had to go get people paid, because the numbers are incredible. 15,000 people will file for Social Security retirement benefits today. Every day of the year, 15,000 people file for Social Security retirement benefits. That doesn't count everything else they do. Widows' benefits, spouses' benefits, children's benefits, so on. So we quit doing these presentations. I became eligible to retire right when that happened. Retired and just kept doing the same thing as a self-employed person. Since then, I've done about another 1,000 presentations all around the country. So as a veteran of 7,000 presentations, you're not going to make me lose my place if you interrupt with a question. I used to tell groups they would not ask me anything I hadn't heard before, but I found that some people accept that as a challenge, so I won't tell you that. But you won't make me lose my place anyway, so make it a conversation, not a lecture. And so interrupt me with a question anytime. It's much more interesting. That's why I usually don't use PowerPoint for in-person presentations, because it kind of creates a barrier. You don't ask them any questions as you should. We do have some people watching online, so when you raise your hand for a question, they'll get a microphone to you, so we'll just wait till they get the microphone to you so you can ask the question so they can hear the question online. And I know you're here for retirement planning, so I'll spend almost all of my time on the retirement parts of Social Security. But I want to take just a couple of minutes here at the start to talk about the other parts of the program. Because almost all the time when people think about Social Security, all they think about are retirement benefits. To most people, Social Security is just a retirement program. Now, those retirement benefits are indispensable. We could not do without them in this country. But based on my 33 years of working for the program, I can assure you those retirement benefits are by far the least important part of Social Security. They also pay survivors' benefits and disability benefits. And most people are aware that Social Security insures us against loss of income due to premature death or disability. But most people don't know how important those benefits are. But as you just heard me say, I think they're far more important than retirement benefits for a lot of reasons. The number one reason is human nature. We look forward to retirement. We make plans for retirement. Evidence right in front of me. Taking time of your lives on a Saturday morning to come down here and make plans for retirement.
Yeah, but because of the donuts.
Could be. Could be. So the fact you're sitting in this room now means you're good planners, because a lot of people should be here and aren't, right? So since you're good planners, I guess we can assume if this seminar had been advertised to you as a seminar on preparing to become disabled, you'd all be here right now, right? That's the human nature part of it. It'd take lobster, not donuts, to get you down here for that subject, right? That's the human nature part of it. We don't think it's going to happen to us. We don't think we're going to become disabled or die before we reach retirement age. But that assumption turns out to be wrong for a shocking amount of people. The records show that 1 out of 3 workers will either die or become so disabled they can't do any type of work at all before they reach retirement age. The great majority of those 1 out of 3 don't die before retirement age, which is the good news, but they become disabled before that age, which is much, much more expensive, which is the bad news. On those survivors' benefits, if a parent should die that's worked and paid into Social Security, they'll pay a check to each child until that child turns 18. If this is an average group, which probably is, it's many people here, almost certainly 5 people in this room either receive those benefits when they were a child because a parent died, or receive them for their own kids because their spouse died at a young age. And in 33 years working at Social Security, I saw a total of 0 families that didn't need that check to keep the house when that wage earner died. Because nobody buys enough life insurance to replace the earnings they lose if the wage earner were to die. Probably most people can't afford it. People think $1 million life insurance is a big policy. Take a 35-year-old, making $100,000 a year, 3 little kids, passes away. Without Social Security, that $1 million is gone. The kids haven't thought about college yet. You'd be amazed how many times I got to this point in the talk I was doing that somebody in the audience raised their hand and tell me their father was an insurance agent and sold life insurance for his living and died when they were a child without any life insurance on himself, and that Social Security saved their home. So somebody in the business is still human, can still make the same mistakes the rest of us can make. And if people don't think they need to buy enough life insurance, they never think at all about disability insurance. But we need that far, far worse for 2 reasons. First of all, we're 500% more likely to become disabled than we are to die before retirement age. And second, as I mentioned, the most expensive thing a person can do in their lifetime is become disabled. Because if somebody becomes disabled, their paycheck stops, but their expenses skyrocket. Now, when Social Security says disabled, they really do mean disabled. For someone to receive disability from Social Security, they have to be so disabled they can't do any type of job that people do for a living that exists anywhere in the 50 states. So medically, a very strict requirement to receive disability from Social Security. Unfortunately, a whole lot of people end up meeting that requirement. 25% of all workers will become that disabled and receive disability benefits before full retirement age, 1 out of every 4 workers. Now, for many decades, it was 30% became disabled, so there's been progress made there, but still 1 out of 4. I mention this always these days, though, because a lot of people, because of technology and because during the pandemic, they had time to think about things, have found a different way to make a living. They don't have to go to work anymore for the boss. My youngest son's one of those. He's a writer. He just writes for a living. He gets assignments online. He writes from his apartment. And to me, that doesn't sound very secure for my generation, right? So he lives in San Antonio. So many jobs open in San Antonio. I told him, you got a master's degree, so many jobs open. You might want to go take one of those jobs. He said, well, Dad, I've had to raise my prices 3 times just to keep the workload manageable. So I guess money-wise, he's doing good. However, absolutely no benefits, right? So if he became disabled, all he'd have is Social Security, and that's not going to be enough. So I'm trying to convince him to buy a individual disability policy. But he's 30 years old. What can you tell him? But I'm working on him, so maybe he will. But anyway, if you do have kids, if your children are working in that gig economy, encourage them to protect themselves and their families against disability. Because year in and year out, good times, bad times, the number one reason families fall out of the middle class into poverty is the disability wage earner. It's almost the only reason a family falls out of the middle class into poverty on a permanent basis is a disability wage earner. So what insurance do you buy that helps you avoid the biggest reason families fall into poverty? And people say, well, disability insurance is expensive. And it's not cheap. But insurance is cheap, insurance you probably don't ever need, right? Auto insurance is expensive because people have wrecks all the time. Disability insurance is expensive because it happens a lot. So anyway, keep that in mind. If you do have kids in the gig economy, try to make sure they protect themselves and their families. Now I start with the gloomy side because I've learned to get your attention right away. From your faces, I can see that it did. The more cheerful side of all that is for 2/3 of us, we will reach retirement age without becoming disabled. And we're all in that lucky 2/3 group in this room, aren't we? Until we're not, which is what makes those parts of the program so very important. So retirement benefits. When we're talking about Social Security, that term, retirement benefits, is not a generic term. It has a specific meaning. Retirement benefits at Social Security means the benefit we can receive based on our own work at a certain age, and that minimum age is age 62. So we have to be at least 62 to receive retirement benefits from Social Security. At 62, those benefits are reduced a little bit for each month we are younger than our full retirement age. If you look at the handout, that chart on the first page, you can see based on your year of birth what your full retirement age is. Back in 1983, because people were living a lot longer, Congress passed this law which, as you can see, raises that full retirement age gradually to 67. But no matter what yours is, if you are retired when you turn 62, you can go ahead and start reduced benefits then. So age 62 hasn't changed for reduced benefits, just full retirement age. To give you, yes? Oh, I'm sorry, we need to get a mic to you. Yeah, he's right there anyway. That's for the online folks, yeah. I almost forgot myself.
Sorry about that. Yes. So I'm guessing from your handout here that since I'm born in 61, that it would be 68 and 2 months?
No, 67 is as high as it goes. Anybody born 1960 and later, their full retirement age is 67.
Okay.
So it's not going up any more than 67.
Okay. Well, thank you.
To give you an idea about why Congress did raise that full retirement age, a few years ago, back when I was still working at Social Security, I was up in Baltimore at their headquarters for a meeting. The actuaries of the program came to speak to us at this meeting. They told us that of the people born 1960 and later, who have 67 for their full retirement age, they think there's a good chance they'll live an average of almost 30 years after they start receiving Social Security retirement benefits, an average of almost 30 years. And for the last 15 years or so, the fastest growing part of the population by percentage has been the people over 100 years old. And more about that later. So that's why Congress did raise that full retirement age. But no matter what yours is, if you are retired when you turn 62, you can start reduced benefits then. So the question is, should you? Well, it's your decision, of course. I can give you the information you need to make an informed decision. First of all, it's a month-by-month reduction if you take the benefit before your full retirement age. Each month you're closer to this age, when you start your checks will be a little higher. If you begin your benefits when you're 62 years and 7 months old, that check would be a little higher for the rest of your life than it would be if you started the month before. So it's a month-by-month reduction. If you start exactly the month you turn 62, at that point you would receive between 70 and 75% of what you would have received had you waited until your full retirement age. The exact percentage you'd get if you start exactly the month you turn 62 depends on where you fall on this chart, what your full retirement age is. So if you are retired when you turn 62, so that you can receive those checks, you have a decision. Should you take those reduced benefits? Should you pass them up and wait and draw your full benefit at your full retirement age? Well, if you are retired at 62, so you can get the checks, and you decide, no, I'm going to pass them up and wait until my full retirement age, by waiting, you would have a bigger check each month for the rest of your life, but you would have passed up all those checks you could have received in exchange for that higher monthly check. With that higher check you get by waiting, it would take you about 12 years receiving that higher check to recover the money you passed up. So in other words, if you take reduced benefit, your break-even point was 12 years past your full retirement age. Now, I know 12 years to get your money back sounds like a long time, but when you're making that decision, keep in mind the average person's going to live a lot longer than that after they start drawing benefits. Think about it. It's a much different world than it used to be. When our grandparents were 70, they were really, really old at that age, weren't they? Matter of fact, for most of us, if our grandparents lived to 70, they beat the odds because most people that generation didn't live that long. Nowadays, if somebody dies in their late 70s, we think they died young. It's a much different world. The reason it pays most people to wait as long as possible to start those benefits is because when people start living longer, insurance companies can just change their tables anytime they choose, which they do all the time. That's why life insurance costs less now than it did 30 years ago. We're living longer. Social Security's tables are based in law. It takes an act of Congress to change them, which other than raising full retirement age, they haven't touched. And we're living longer than they thought we're going to when they raised full retirement age at this point. Now, Social Security started paying reduced benefits, which means benefits before full retirement age in 1958. Full retirement age back then was, of course, 65. So before 1958, you had to wait till 65 to draw benefits. You couldn't take a reduced benefit before full retirement age. So what that means is the reduction for taking the benefit early is based on how many more years the average 65-year-old lived in 1958. We're living a lot longer past 65 now than we did in 1958. So if you're the average person, you'll draw a whole lot more total benefits if you wait and take it at full retirement age. But nobody's the average person. We are who we are, so your decision to make. People ask me all the time. They say, when's the best time for me to start taking those checks? Wanting me to make that decision for them. Thought about this a whole lot. I can still only come up with one way to answer that question. And that is, tell me the date you're going to die, and I'll tell you the best time to start taking those checks. Otherwise, my crystal ball doesn't work that good to make that decision with somebody. But if you do have some kind of inside information, and you know you're like some people I used to visit back when I worked at Social Security, you might want to wait and take that full benefit at your full retirement age. Social Security is a special project every couple of years. In this project, they go out and visit all the people over 100 years old who are receiving Social Security benefits. You might not think that would be a big project, but remember, it is the fastest growing part of the population. There's a purpose behind this project. This is a security audit. The reason they go see all the people over 100 in person is so they can verify that they are still alive, that they haven't died and somebody hid that fact and kept cashing those checks. They don't tell them that's why they're out there talking to them, but I found out a lot, I'll figure out our own. I used to help a lot of the local offices all around the DFW area with this project because I was already out in the field going to seminars, so I used to help them with this project because they needed help with it. It's a big project. There are so many people over 100. A few years ago, they had to change the project. They can no longer go visit all the people over 100 anymore. There's way too many. So now when that project comes around, they just go see the ones they haven't seen yet, the ones who have turned 100 since the last time they did the project. Because just this year, just in 2023, just in Texas, more than 3,500 people will turn 100. That does not count the ones already over 100 January 1st. That's 3,500 more turn 100 just in Texas in this 1 year. That's why you don't see it on the news hardly ever anymore. Something that happens 10 times in the state every day of the year is no longer news. Not only are there a lot more of them, they're a whole lot healthier group than they used to be. Of these 3,500 people that are turning 100 in the state this year, the great majority are not in a nursing home. Most of them still live out in the community. Quite a few of them still live in their own homes, all by themselves, taking care of themselves. And I really do mean taking care of themselves. I've seen a few of these people actually mowing the lawns at 100 years old when I drove up to their house. One year, I had to go to a person's job site to find him. He was still working at 100. Let me tell you about one lady people always find amusing. We visited her quite a few years back. We visited all the people over 100 each time. She was 103 years old. At this time, we went to see her. She was all by herself in her own home on the west side of Fort Worth, which is the older part of town. She's just in great shape physically, really sharp mentally. As we were talking to her that day, she got curious. She said, well, who's the oldest person you have on your list? We looked, we said, well, the oldest person in this area is a lady right here in Fort Worth that's 108 years old. Well, this 103-year-old's reaction to that was, 108? Wow, now that's old. So if you're going to be like her, that 108-year-old, you pay to wait before retirement, you money ahead. Your choice when you take those benefits. Or you might even want to wait longer. Once a person reaches this full retirement age, there's no limit on their earnings. When somebody is younger than full retirement age, there's a limit how much they can make from work without affecting their benefits. But once they reach their full retirement age, they can keep on working, still receive their full benefits. But even then, some people don't take their checks in. Some people even wait till 70 to take those retirement benefits. Why would they do that? Because of something called delayed retirement credits. For each month from your full retirement age, the age on the chart here, until age 70, that you don't take a retirement benefit from Social Security, when you do take that check, they'll add something extra called a delayed retirement credit. They add that for each month you don't take a check, but it adds up to 8% over 12 months. So if your full retirement age is 67 and you don't take those benefits until 70, 3 years later, your check would be 24% higher for the rest of your life. 8% for each of those 3 years. But don't delay past 70, because they quit adding extra to 70 no matter what. Also, those delayed retirement benefits only apply to retirement benefits. Delayed a spouse's or widow's benefit past full retirement age would not increase those. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, let's say the husband was the higher wage earner, and he waited till 70 to take his benefits. Because he waited till 70, let's say his check is $4,000 a month now. As you'll see in just a few minutes when we talk about widow's benefits, if he passes away first, the widow does get those delayed retirement because he got by waiting, but she'd be due that full $4,000 at her own full retirement age. That $4,000 would not go up if she delayed taking her widow's benefits past her own full retirement age. That would be the max she could get. You've been really quiet. Before I go on to wives and husbands and widows and widowers benefits, then after that on to Medicare, let me pause here. Any other questions about retirement benefits before I move on to the, yes, got one here?
My question may sound humorous.
Okay.
Because I started working after my retirement, retirement age.
Okay, yeah.
I was a preacher, a pastor, so my church was not taking any social security cut from my salary, and then I was self-employed. So I started working only at the age of 69.
Okay.
Now only 6 years since I am worked.
Okay.
So what will be my retirement benefit?
Well, you need 40 credits to draw benefit at all. That's 10 years of work. Can't earn more than 4 credits in a year. See 40 credits. So if you get 40 credits, you wouldn't draw anything. So you need to work a little longer, at least you work some maybe someplace else while you were preaching. If you worked, you might have some other credits. You can go to, if you haven't ever done this, go to Social Security's website, socialsecurity.gov, socialsecurity.gov, and you can download your Social Security statement. You have to register for a Social Security account, but you want that to do that anyway. Then get your Social Security statement. It'll tell you how many credits you have. Now, if you have 40, it just says you met the requirement. If you have less than 40, it tells you how many you have, so you know how much longer you have to work. If you're working full-time, you're earning 4 credits a year. So, if, you can't earn more than 4 in a year. Now,
an additional question to that, maybe, can I pay? Since I have already worked 6 years now,
yeah.
can I pay the rest of the
No, you can't. Only way to earn a credit is to work at a job covered by Social Security. You can't buy them. Sorry, have to work a job covered by Social Security. And then if you have your 40 credits, it's not going to be a real high benefit because of the way they compute benefits. And actually, let's go on to, people usually ask this question anyway. Let's talk about how they compute benefits. And the answer to this is going to show you how much wrong information is out there about Social Security. Anything your brother-in-law told you on Thanksgiving Day about Social Security and Medicare after watching the Cowboys and eating turkey was wrong. Anything your neighbors tell you about Social Security and Medicare is wrong. Anything your coach tell you about Social Security is wrong. No exceptions to that rule. And how they compute benefits is one of the biggest pieces of misinformation out there. Because everybody tells you they use your last 3 or last 5 or last 10 years of earnings. That never has been remotely close to being true. Your retirement benefit is based on your highest 35 years of earnings. Highest 35. Before they pick out those high 35, though, they go back and adjust all your past year's earnings for inflation. Turn your past year's earnings into current dollars. Let me show you how that works. Let's say somebody made $16,000 in 1975 on their salary, and now they're filing for their Social Security. Now, $16,000 does not, it's not a high salary, does it? In 1975, that was a great salary. You could buy 2 brand new Corvettes for $16,000 in 1975. They turn that 1975 $16,000 into current dollars, that's over $100,000. They do that with every year of your earnings, then pick out the high 35. So your highest earnings in the past will always be highest because they keep in pace with inflation. And so if you don't have 35 years, unfortunately, if you had 10 years of work, there'd be 25 zeros in that computation because they're going to use the high 35. Now you can, after you get, when you get that, log in, set your account up and get your Social Security statement, if you don't have 40 credits, you can go to something called the retirement estimator. You can put in how much your earnings are and how much you might make in the future. To get the 40 credits, it'll show you an estimate of how much your benefit amount would be when you get those. Thank you. The question over here?
Yes, I have a question about if you're paying into TRS,
Yeah.
the teacher retirement system, how does that affect Social Security?
Well, first of all, it depends on if you're paying into Social Security or not whether you're paying into TRS, because a lot of people under TRS also pay into Social Security on their jobs. You know, UTA, all the 4-year colleges, a lot of school districts. But the question really is, what if I'm going to receive a pension based on work not covered Social Security? Because, for example, City of Dallas retirees are affected exactly the same as Dallas ISD retirees because they don't pay into Social Security for the City of Dallas either. So it applies. Everybody receives a pension based on work not covered Social Security. So if you are going to receive a pension based on work not covered Social Security, but you also have your 40 Social Security credits, you receive your own Social Security, you receive a fair amount based on what you paid in. But unless you have a whole lot of work on a Social Security and that's your second career, they will compute your benefits differently. And the reason they do that is so that you don't get a better deal out of Social Security by not paying in than everybody else gets who paid in every job they ever had. The reason they have to compute your benefits differently, if you're receiving a pension based on work not covered by Social Security, goes back to the very way they compute benefits ever since the program started. It is true the more you make and the more you earn, the higher your check is. That's true. So the high-income worker gets a bigger check than the middle-income worker, who gets a bigger check than the low-income worker. That is all true, but this is social insurance. The social part of Social Security is the computation is skewed to the low-income worker. The low-income worker's check is not as big as somebody who made more money, but they get a higher percentage of their earnings replaced with Social Security. They get a better deal in the computation. And that's a very necessary part of the program because that low-income worker doesn't have a pension. Of course, they never had any money to invest. That's the 250,000 people in DFW living on Social Security only. You've got to pay them enough to live on. Well, what's happening before this windfall law is passed, and that's what the law is called, the windfall elimination provision. What's happening before the windfall law is passed with somebody, maybe like you, or like a lot of people anyway, especially teachers, who spent pretty much their whole working life not paying into Social Security, but they worked a little in high school and college, worked some summers maybe, and barely got their 40 credits. Before the windfall laws passed, I saw a lot of people in that situation that got back every dime they paid to Social Security in their whole lifetime in their first 5 checks. Because they got a bigger advantage than low-income workers got because their earnings were so much lower than real income workers. Where it takes everybody else 5 years to get all their money back. So all the windfall law does, it doesn't give you that advantage low-income workers have in that computation. However, the law did not do its job totally. I've seen thousands of cases. Every one I've seen is affected by windfall, gets their money back 2 times faster than everybody else still. You should get it back 20 times faster than everybody else. Everybody I've seen gets it back still fast. You're still getting a better deal than everybody else. It's not a 20 times better deal. I did a personal consultation yesterday, somebody. Retired from TRS, barely had her 40 credits. Without windfall, she got all her money back in her first 6 checks. After windfall applied to her, she's got all her money back in her first 13 checks, almost 5 times faster than everybody else. So when somebody tells me they're affected by windfall now, you know what I say? Congratulations. Because that means Social Security is the best investment you could have ever made in your lifetime. Nobody gets that kind of return on investment. If I could get all the money I put into my 401k every 13 months for the rest of my life, I wouldn't be getting ready to spend the summer in Texas. You'd have to come to Waikiki to hear me speak. So it's a very fair law because you're still getting money back faster than everybody else, just not, you're still getting a bonus for not paying in, just not as big a bonus as you used to get. But that's why I say you draw a fair amount. If you got your 40 credits, you'll draw a fair amount even after windfall applies to you. Was there any other questions? Yes.
The first question, you said after 5 years, is that everybody gets the money back, or does that equate across the whole
Yeah,
spectrum?
it's 5 months plus or minus. I mean, 5 years plus or minus a few months. But yeah, everybody.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And then you said that at 62, if you take it at 75% of the full benefit that you would receive, is there a cap on the benefit? Is it based on your income, or is it just?
No, it's always based on your highest 35 years of earnings.
And is that a percentage of that you get as full benefit? It's not 100% of that, correct?
Well, no, but
Yeah.
But the rest of the computation is the subject I used to teach new Social Security on. It was a 7-hour session. The rest of that, so we're not going to do that.
Okay.
That's where it gets complicated.
Is there a rough
Well,
or?
no,
Okay.
no. There's no way to simplify it. Some things, if you simplify them, you just make it wrong, right? Yeah.
Hey, Tom, you touched on this, and I have a second part to this. So you mentioned that when you reach full retirement age, right, and you want to work, then you get to keep everything. It's actually a really good deal.
Right.
But let's just say that for whatever reason, excuse me, you want to take Social Security benefits prior to reaching,
Okay.
and you want to work. So I've heard various things. I just want to get clarification on
Okay.
that. The Social Security sets a limit that you can only make like $21,000 a year or something, and then if you go over that, there's a delay. I mean, you don't lose the benefits, but you don't get
Right,
them.
they hold-
Or
they withhold some.
Is that right? Or?
Yeah. There's a limit on your earnings if you're younger than full retirement age, younger than this age. There's a limit how much you can make from work. Now, first of all that counts for that limit is what you're actually working for. They don't care about your interest, dividends, pensions, royalties, distributions from IRAs or 401ks, rental income. None of that counts for the limit. All that counts for the limit is what you're actually working for right then. There's only 2 kinds of earned income that counts for the limit. Wages from an employer, you're working for right then, or if you were self-employed, your net profit from self-employment. That's all that counts for that limit. And you had the amount right. It goes up with inflation, but this year that limit is $21,240, $21,240. Let's say we have a 63-year-old drawing his Social Security. He goes and takes a part-time job. If he does not earn more than $21,240 from that job this year, his benefits are not affected at all. If he earns above that, for every $2 he earns above $21,240, $1 withheld from his benefits. So let's say the 63-year-old made $23,240 from that job, exactly $2,000 above the limit. They'd withhold $1 for every 2 he's above that. So if he's $2,000 above, they withhold $1,000 from his checks, pay him the rest of benefits for the year. No matter when you start benefits, though, once you reach this full retirement age, no limit on your earnings. Also, there's a higher limit in the year that you reach full retirement age. The year that you reach full retirement age, begin with that month you reach full retirement age, no limit from then on, of course. But in that calendar year in which you reach full retirement age, in the months before then, you're allowed to make a higher amount, which is right around $55,000 this year without affecting your benefits. So let's say somebody's going to reach their full retirement age next year in June. Well, June on, it doesn't matter how much they make. But if they're not going to make more than about $55,000 from their job January through May, they could draw those checks too. But of course, they'd be reduced for each month they're younger than full retirement. It would be a slight reduction. Also, there's a special rule for the first year that you retire. The first year that you retire, we're assuming you're under full retirement age here, you can receive a check for each month you're not working, no matter how much you made before you retired that year. So let's say somebody's going to retire September 30th of this year, and they're not working October, November, December. Since that's their first year retirement, no matter how much they make January through September, they can draw a check for October, November, December, the months they're not working. That lets somebody retire during a year and go ahead and start their checks up right away. But it only applies in that first year of retirement. If that person went back to work the next year, if they made over the limit, they'd withhold one for every two that are above the limit. Wouldn't matter when they worked or when they didn't. Did that answer your question? Question over here. Oh, we got one over here first.
So I did not work full-time after I reached 33. I've worked part-time at different places.
Right.
I think you said, and I'm sorry I missed it, how do I find out if I have my 40 credit?
Okay, well, the Social Security statement that they used to mail to us before our birthday every year, they don't mail that out automatically, but you can download it off their website anytime you want to. And and I used to know exactly where it was, but they just revamped their Social Security statement, so I don't know exactly where it is on there, but it is in that Social Security statement. It tells you how many credits you have. Now, credits have one purpose only: you have enough to get the check, which means they stop counting at 40. So if you have more than 40, it just says you met the requirement. If you have less than 40 at that place, it tells you exactly how many you have. We got one over here, two over here. You're getting burning your calories.
Yeah, right. All those donuts. So here's a, hypothetical. She'll reach full retirement age before I probably quit working.
Mm-hmm.
So if she applies for spouse benefit while I'm still working, how do they compute her benefit when they don't know what my ultimate benefit
Well,
is?
she can't draw a spouse benefit on your record until you're drawing your own. You'll see that in a minute. But
Okay. So I have to be drawing a benefit for her to draw a spousal benefit.
Right.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So she doesn't really have to do anything until then.
no, but she might want to take her own if she has her 40 credits.
Yeah.
Okay, no, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, see, and of course you might, depending on what your health insurance situation is,
Right.
Medicare might be an issue, but as far as Social Security, yeah, she won't do anything if she doesn't have her 40 credits till you start drawing yours.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Thanks.
But she can get Medicare on your record once you're at least 62, whether you're drawing your benefits or not.
Right.
She just can't get Social Security on your record
Right.
until you're drawing yours.
Okay, thanks.
So what I'm gathering is that I've heard that you should wait until 70 and a half.
No, that's not Social Security. That was the old age to draw, where you had to start taking minimum distributions
But
from your 401k.
Okay, so I
70,
guess
you don't want to wait past 70 for Social Security.
correct. But if you wait, at 70, if you've worked part of that year, is what you're saying, and
Work has nothing to do with it. There's no limit on your earnings once you reach full retirement age.
Okay.
What they're saying, what somebody might be
Gotcha.
telling you, if for an unreduced benefit, which means benefits past full retirement age, the application can be 6 months retroactive if you choose. So somebody wouldn't lose any money as long as they applied before they were more than 70 and a half, because they could pay 6 months retroactive back to 70. But it's the same amount of money. There's no reason to wait for it. Yes.
So I'm going to apply for. I'll reach 70 in September, so I'm going to
Yeah.
do
You
it
apply
in
now. You
September.
apply
I
now.
haven't taken it yet. She's already taken hers.
Okay.
Social Security benefits. When I take mine, what happens to her benefits?
Well, it depends on your amounts. Now, first of all, I already said, and I'll mention again, it's with widow's benefits. That higher check you got by waiting until 70, that is included in the widow's computation. It is not included in the spousal benefit when you're alive. It's always based on half of your full retirement age amount, the amount you'd have drawn at 66 and 2 months, or whatever yours is. Yeah, 66 for you, right? So the spousal benefit when you're living is based on half of your age 66 amount. So for her to draw benefits on your record, her full retirement age amount, what she would have got at full retirement age, has to be less than half of your full retirement age amount. If that's the case, they'll add some extra to her record at that point. Yeah.
Okay. Just a question, how much do you know about how secure the Social Security bucket is, so to speak? As
so-
far as you hear that if in 12 years, we're only going to get 80% of what you would get now.
Yeah,
if
that's a Congress doesn't take action. That's not going to happen. Congress isn't
Okay.
going to let that happen, for one thing.
Okay.
Some people say, I'm going to take my Social Security early because it's going to go away. It's not a good reason to take it early. Social Security is not going to go away. I mean, this church wouldn't be here without Social Security going away. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. Tomorrow morning, come to church here, start counting the people that are putting money in the plate that are on Social Security. going to be well more than half. If they weren't drawing that Social Security check, they wouldn't have the money to put in the plate. Social Security cannot go away. There's so many reasons why it can't go away. But that last recession we had in 2008, 2009 showed one huge reason why Social Security will never go away unless our government's finally overthrown, because it is the largest source of income everywhere. And it gets spent no matter if there's a recession or not. Here in Texas, Social Security pays over $6 billion a month in benefits. Over $6 billion a month in benefits. And almost every penny of that gets spent every month. Because if you're 80 years old, you are no longer saving for retirement. All right? You spend that check because it's coming next month and next month and next month. How many paychecks does $6 billion a month turn into? A month. I'm talking about a month, not a year. $6 billion a month. That's a bunch of paychecks. A lot of economists started wondering after the last recession, why did the country in 1929, in similar circumstances, fall into a 10-year-long depression, and in 2008, only a very severe but very short-lived recession? There's a lot of reasons, because we put some safeguards in the 30s to keep that from happening. But a lot of concluded the only reason we didn't fall into another Great Depression was because Social Security exists now and did in 1929. Because that $6 billion a month was still getting spent, keeping all these stores and restaurants open, keeping the lights on in this church. Can you imagine how many more businesses would have shut down if that $6 billion wasn't getting spent in all those businesses, all those restaurants? I speak at retirement centers for American Airlines, and I fly all over the country speaking at seminars. Being a Fort Worth boy, I fly American, So I started making a point. I'm sitting at the gate every time, looking who's getting on the plane with me. And almost invariably, at least half the people getting on that plane were people clearly on Social Security, which means it's more than that because some people look younger than they are, right? Well, for 2/3 of the people over 65, Social Security is more than half their income. So if Social Security checks weren't going out, hardly any of those people would have been getting on that plane. So when I speak at American Airlines, I tell them, if Social Security goes away, either your paychecks get cut in half or half you get laid off because there's no other options there. Plus, the human cost would be tremendous. I already mentioned here in the Metroplex, 250,000 people on Social Security have no other income. So if those checks didn't go out next month, there would be an additional 250,000 people, potentially homeless people, just in this area. Most of them would not become homeless. I've thought through this. You know why they wouldn't become homeless? They'd move in with you. When somebody tells me they don't think Social Security is going to be here in the future, I say, well, you better not downsize at retirement then. You're going to need at least one bedroom for mom and one for grandma if Social Security goes away. And Medicare is the same way. There's no options. These aren't programs. Medicare can't go away either, unless you don't want medical care anymore, no matter what age you are. People think if Medicare went away, it just affects people on Medicare. No, Medicare is the only reason we have hospitals and doctors available. Back when I was working at Social Security, I was going to speak at a retirement seminar at a hospital in Tarrant County. And I got there for the seminar, and they said, well, we want to put you in a later slot because we're having an emergency board of directors meeting, and those people want to come hear you. It was budget time, and Congress thinking about cutting back hospital reimbursements for Medicare by 2%. A little 2% cut in what Medicare paid to hospitals was what Congress was considering. The board of directors having an emergency meeting to see what they would do if that happened. They came out and meeting and said we would have to close the doors. If Medicare cut our reimbursement by 2%, we couldn't survive. So that cut didn't happen because that's what hospitals are telling Congress from all over the country, right? So if Medicare went away, it doesn't matter if you're 35 years old or 65 or whatever. You have an accident on I-30, you're going to bleed to death because there's no hospital to take you to. Once again, that's not going to happen, right? Congress won't let that happen. And that 20% cut that they say could happen if they don't take, well, that's $1.2 billion in Texas a month. That's hundreds of thousands of jobs lost if that happens. Congress won't let that happen, so don't worry about it. Yes?
So, back in the 80s, the Congress decided to go ahead and spend?
Didn't happen, never has happened.
Okay.
Not one penny of trust money from Social Security, everybody used anything but Social Security, not one penny. I've heard everything from battleships in the World War II, which wasn't enough money to be in there to build a battleship in World War II, just started collecting taxes, to whatever, to welfare or whatever. It's whatever people don't like, they say Congress used it for, but it hasn't ever happened. Not one penny's ever used anything but Social Security. Matter of fact, show you how sacred that trust fund is. Social Security is totally independent financially from the government. So not only are the benefits come out of this trust fund, so do everything they spend, their salaries, their electric bills, their rents on their buildings, But all those administrative costs are only less than half of 1%. So out of every dollar Social Security tax you pay, eventually 99.5 cents of it goes out to check somebody. By far the most efficient insurance system, public or private, in the world is the U.S. Social Security system. And they got almost a $2 trillion surplus right now being drawn down by us baby boomers. That would have been enough, but we're living longer. They thought we were going to, so they need to make some changes. But that $2 trillion extra is going to make those changes a lot less severe than it would have been otherwise. But when I was working for Social Security, I'd do a seminar. The time I spent talking about Social Security, my salary is paid out of the Social Security Trust Fund. The time I spent talking about Medicare, my salary is paid out of the Medicare Trust Fund. Because you can't use Social Security money even to pay for Medicare. You can only use for Social Security. That's how sacred those trust funds are. Yeah.
Tom, you have to. Thank you for sharing that information about the security of the Social Security system, but is the threat about the number of workers employed today relative to the beneficiaries that will need Social Security benefits in the future real?
Yeah, that's the reason I needed to make some adjustments is absolutely that, right.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course there's, it's up to Congress to address that. There's a lot of good ideas to address it. It's just going to have to be done on a bipartisan basis. Social Security is so popular that no one party is going to make a major change by themselves. And democracy is by far the best system of government. However, it is not the most efficient system of government. So in a very big program like this, so popular, Social Security is more popular among all age groups than the military is. More people support Social Security than they support in the country even, right? Well, they're not going to make a change until the crisis is a lot closer. That's just the way democracy works.
My next question.
You can blame the politicians for that, but that's our fault actually as voters. Because we'll punish them if we don't like the change, but when the crisis is here, we'll welcome the change, right? Yeah. And so that's just it. The crisis isn't close enough yet. but there's no way they're going to cut benefits. There's no way it can go away. Like I said, this church wouldn't survive, I guarantee you, if Social Security went away. And neither would most restaurants or stores or any business. I used to tell people always Social Security money was a different color, so when everybody got their paycheck, they'd see how much their paycheck came from Social Security. One other funny thing on this, I'm probably talking too long about this subject, but I was talking about this at another seminar, and this lady raised her hand. She said, my son is in his 30s. He said he'll never draw any Social Security. I said, well, what does he do for a living? She said, well, he deals poker at Windstar Casino. Do they even let people in that casino that aren't on Social Security? I have never seen one. They send 20 buses a day down here to pick people on Social Security, take them to that casino. His whole paycheck is coming directly from Social Security right now. You probably don't ever go to that casino because you're good church people here. Was there any other questions before we go on to the spousal type benefits? Yes.
Is full retirement age figured on your birth date or just the month?
The year. It's this chart here.
Well, 66 and 6 months.
Okay, that would be.
Is that the first of the month or your birthday?
It's just goes by the month. So if your birthday was in January, then it'd be July if it was 66 and 6 months. Just had 6 months.
Yeah, but it starts at the first of the month or your birth date?
It starts it's the first of the month. It goes by the whole month.
So that could be a whole month's difference.
Yeah, it goes by the first of the month. So if you're full retirement age, you reach full retirement age on July 15th, then it's July 1st your full retirement age.
Perfect.
Yeah. And that's a good question because if you start at 62, you have to be 62 the entire first month. That's a good question because if you start at 62, you have to be 62 the entire first month you're eligible. So for 62, it's actually the month after your birthday when you're eligible. So that's a good point.
Someone has not yet worked and they passed to 66 years old. Will they get Social Security in any way?
Once they get their 40 credits, yeah.
No?
Oh, they have to have 10 years of work, yeah. They didn't
work.
They can draw on their spouse's record, possibly. So what was that? I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood the question.
Yeah, they have never worked here.
Right, okay.
And but they have passed to 66 years old. Will they be able to get any Social
Not
Security
unless their
benefit?
spouse worked. Somebody has to, either the other spouse has to have worked and got their 40 credits.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any others?
Tom?
Yeah.
Could you give everyone your advice on the most efficient way to file? 'Cause I believe there are a number of folks in the room who have yet to file. Do they visit an office? Do they go online? Is it a combination of both?
Well, don't visit an office because they are so busy. Before we baby start reaching retirement age, a big city office like most of them in this area was seeing 900 to 1,000 people a day. So you imagine it's at least double that now with us baby boomers because there's a bunch of us. And so you don't want to go in. The best way to file is online. You can file for every benefit except widows' benefits online. Widows and widowers, you'll see in a little bit why you can't file for those online. They need to talk to you to give you the information you need to make a good decision for widows and widowers. So you can't file for them online, but you can call their toll-free number, which is 800-772-1213, 800-772-1213. You can call their toll-free number, set an appointment for a local office to call you and take the application over the phone. So that's the best way to do those. Or if you don't want to file online, do that same thing. Call the toll-free number. They'll set an appointment for them to call you and take the application over the phone. You don't want to go in if you can help it, because there's just so many people, so overloaded. The Social Security people, be nice to your people you're talking to. They're working 25, 30 hours overtime a week to get you paid. Wow. Because, as I said, their staff is the lowest since 1998. Wow. The workload's pretty much doubled because of all those baby boomers reaching retirement age. So, if you think they need more help, don't talk to them. Talk to your congressperson, because they're the ones who tell them how many they can hire. Now, this last big budget deal last year gave them money to hire more people, but new hires actually reduce productivity because it's a very complicated program. It takes them 3 years to be fully independent. So during that 3 years, they've got a mentor not taking time from their job to mentor them. So be nice to them. They're working hard. Any other questions before we go into the spousal type benefits?
So once you die, though, your benefits are done.
Yeah. She said once you die, your benefits are done. Well, you might have a widower draw depending on how much they are, but other than that, yeah. Okay, so spouses benefits. Now, when we're talking about Social Security and say spouses benefits, that means both members of the couple are still living. So to receive benefits on your living spouse's Social Security record, they have to be drawing their benefits first, as we already mentioned. You'd have to be at least age 62, and you'd have to not be entitled to more based on your own work. If you've worked enough yourself so that you're due a bigger check based on your own work than you can see one of your spouses, that's what you get, is that higher amount you've earned based on your own work. You can't draw anything on your spouse's record. And when your spouse is alive, anything you can receive on their record is based on half of their unreduced full retirement age amount. So when your spouse is alive, anything you draw on their record is based on half. If that spouse is deceased, then the benefits they pay on that person's record they call widow's benefits. And when we're talking about Social Security, we say widows, that means widowers too. Exactly the same for men or women. Yes?
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused. So I'm actually older than my husband.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say if we're both still alive, how would I be able to draw on his benefits if he's still alive? Because he's young.
If your full retirement age amount was less than half of his, then you would.
If my full
If your
retirement,
full retirement age amount was less than half of his full retirement age amount, then you'd be due some spouse benefits on his record once he was drawing his checks.
okay,
Yes, if you had never worked at all, you'd draw a benefit based on half of his full amount. They'd be reduced if you took it early, but so it just is. It's just part of Social Security. So it's not just widows. It's possible you could draw while they're living if your own was less than half.
Just real quick to put it
The mic's right there.
I have a similar question, similar situation. My husband's younger. He wants to go to his full retirement age.
Okay.
But I know even though I have enough credits on my own, my earnings are so much less that my full amount, if I waited to 67, is less than half of his.
Right.
So I'm not sure what to do with that. Do I take some now and then convert, or then you reduce the amount you?
Well, you could take your own. You could take your own, and then when he started drawing his, you'd get some added to it. But you don't convert over to other. You keep drawing your own reduced benefit,
And then
and
get
they
the
some of his record added
differential?
to it. So you'd still have that same dollar reduction on your own. You wouldn't go up to half of his, for example, if you were full retirement age, because you're drawing them separately. You're drawing your own, then you get some additional added from his record.
No, I get that. I'm not going to get mine plus half of his.
Yeah, I didn't. That's what I was saying. You don't switch over to his. You keep
see.
drawing your own reduced benefit. Get some of his record added to it, but that reduction in dollars you took on your own, you still have that on your total benefit.
Okay, so I still would do better to wait to full retirement than I would get
Maybe.
fully half of his, because
not
I'm in the
necessarily.
weird place like she is. We're in this unusual situation, I guess.
In my opinion, when you have a couple, I really like the idea of the one with the higher benefit wait until 70, because that way you've maximized the check the last survivor will draw. But as you'll see when you get the widow's benefits in just a minute, once one of you passes away, the survivor's drawn that one higher check. Why maximize both checks, in my opinion? When one of you passes away, the survivor's going to be drawing the same amount anyway. So if I were you, I'd go ahead and take it early, because if your husband passed away before you, no matter when you start drawing your benefits, if you're full retirement age, you're going to go up to his check amount anyway.
Okay, so I need to do this with make-believe numbers. Let's say the maximum I would get by myself is 1,000. If I draw early, they're going to take off relatively 30%,
Yeah,
so
so-
I only get 700.
Okay, got you.
So if he was going to get, I don't know, 3,000 a month, half of that is 1,500.
Right.
So I've already reduced my maximum benefit by going early, so I would never get the 1,500.
Right, because you're gonna keep drawing the 700 when you start drawing, and then they subtract half of his, that 1,500. They subtract your 1,000 from that. So if you were full retirement age when he started drawing his, you get 500 added to your 700 from his record. If you weren't full retirement age, that 500 would be reduced for each month you're young and full retirement age, and that amount added to your 750,
Okay.
to your 700. So see, you still got that $300 reduction on your own no matter what.
Okay.
Because you're not converting over to his record, you're just adding the difference between the full retirement age, half of his and yours to it.
Okay. I think I get it, but not 100%.
She took it at 62, so if she's a full retirement at 67, she draws 70% of her own at 62. So she took hers at 62, so 1,000 went down to 700. Because his didn't change. No, his is that other 500. That if she's full retirement age when he starts drawing his, she gets that full 500 added to her 700 on her own. The difference between half of his full amount and her full amount. So if she was 68 when he started drawing his, she'd get 500 added to her 700 on her own. That'd be her check.
But hers would never go up to 1,500?
No. That reduction is permanent on her own.
I permanently reduced my future benefit by drawing early.
Yeah. Right.
If I did it.
Right. But if he passes away first and she's full retirement age, no matter when she started taking hers, she goes up to his amount, full amount.
I'm trying to bridge what you said to a couple of questions. When do you actually file for? How soon should you file for? You told Craig that you should file for it now.
You can file for it 3 months ahead of when you want it to
3
start.
months. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the earliest you can. It's 3 months before you want it to start. Okay, so widow's benefits, as I said, are based on the full amount, not based on half like when your spouse is alive. Let's take an example, most common situation with widow's benefits. Let's say we have a husband and a wife both drawing Social Security. Say the husband's check is $2,500 a month, the wife's is $1,600 a month. If he dies before her, if she's at her full retirement age or older, her check would go up to exactly what his was. So in this example, her check would go up to $2,500 a month. If she was younger than her full retirement age when he died, her check would go up to that higher amount, once again reduced a little bit for each month she's younger than that age. Widows and widowers can start drawing those widow's benefits as early as age 60 on their deceased spouse record. And widows and widowers have an option that does not apply if your spouse is living. You remember I said if your spouse is living, you have to take your own Social Security first. That doesn't apply to widows and widowers. They can take whichever benefit they want, their own or the widow's first, and let the other one keep on growing and then take it later. For example, let's say we have a widow. She's been working herself, but her deceased husband made more money. So the widow's benefits are higher than her own retirement benefits. Let's say she retires at 62. At that point, she has the option of taking her own lower benefit first, reduced for being younger than her full retirement age, receive that till she reaches full retirement age, and then switch over to unreduced widow's benefits for the rest of her life. Or vice versa, if her own was higher, she could take the widow's first and let her own keep growing. Her own keep growing if she delayed it till 70 with those delayed retirement credits. So if those apply to anybody here, if you are a widow or widower, and you're either unmarried or you did not marry your current spouse until you're at least 60, because then you can still get the widow's benefits, I strongly encourage you to contact Social Security and let them give you all your options and dollar figures and dates. They do all the time for widows and widowers. The only way to make an informed decision, you might want to bring that information back to Ryan or Randy, help you make the right decision. But get that information from Social Security first, you make an informed decision. Because usually, unless there's a huge gap between the benefits, usually if you're going to live the average lifespan, it does pay to take the lower one first if you can afford it, and then switch over to that higher one later. I mean, that's what I'm doing. My first wife passed away. I didn't remarry until I was 60, over 60. So I'm drawing widower's benefits now, because mine's a lot higher, and then at 70 I'll switch over to my own. And we pause again. Any other questions about wives, husbands, widows, widowers' benefits before we move on? Got several. Yeah.
Isn't there a cap on the combined that you all can make together?
No.
Okay.
What people get confused about, there's a cap on how much benefits they'll pay on one Social Security number. Even though they call it the family maximum, it has nothing to do with, it's not really a family maximum, it's a maximum pay on one Social Security number. For example, if a father passes away, it's reached at 3 people. If the father passes away, if they have 3 kids or 10 kids, they pay the same total amount of money divided 3 ways or 10 ways. But that's only on one Social Security number. It's only reached if there's 3 people or more drawn on one Social Security number. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. There was some more questions. Here's one right here.
What if your spouse passes away before they're on Social Security?
Then your amount is based on what they would have got if they kept on working, making that much money till full retirement age. It's pretty close to what it'd be. It's based on their full amount. If you waited till your full retirement age, you'd draw that full amount. You could take it as early as age 60, and at that point you get 71.5% of that. So it's paid as if they're already full retirement age when they passed away. It's based on the full amount.
And how do you find that out?
You can contact Social Security. They have to be very careful about the Privacy Act, because they violate the Privacy Act. They not only lose a job, they go to prison, and they don't want that to happen. So they're going to ask you for some information to verify it's you. But you can call them up. They might ask you to fax in your marriage license or something, or they might be able to get enough information from you they satisfy themselves you are who you say you are. Anyway, they'll do all that, and then they can give you an estimate. Yeah. Do not go into the Social Security system and act like you're him and try to set up a Social Security account, because that would be a federal crime.
I noticed that the Social Security Administration always asks about previous marriages and spouses, and I've heard that you can draw off a previous spouse. How does that work?
Okay. Well, you're potentially able to. It's not like a pension where you automatically get part of it. A divorce is not like that. It makes you potentially eligible. So let's just say a divorced wife, but could be divorced husband, same for men or women. A divorced wife can receive benefits on her ex-husband's record if they were married at least 10 years, if she's unmarried when she applies those benefits, and if she meets the same requirements a current wife or widow has to meet. Not be entitled to more based on her own work, be at least 60 for widows and 62 for wives. If an ex-wife does receive benefits on her ex-husband's record, her checks do not affect anything he or a current wife or widow might receive. Their checks do not affect anything she'd receive. She draws independently.
So if I remarried, it's all.
If you remarry, yeah, if he's living and you remarried while you're still married, you couldn't draw anything on his record. If he's deceased, just like a current widow, if he's deceased, as long as you didn't remarry till you were over 60, you could potentially draw the divorced widow's benefits.
I had two questions. So if you talked about the if a spouse dies or if someone becomes disabled, does the 40 credits count in those situations? What if you don't? What if the deceased doesn't have 40 credits?
Okay, well, if a person, let's say a parent dies, have kids under age 18, depending on the age they died, you couldn't expect somebody, a parent age 24, to have 40 credits, right? And so it depends on what age they are when they pass away. For example, if the father was 32 years old and died, he would have, if he had 10 total credits that kids could draw, or if he earned 6 in the last 3 years, they could draw. Okay. So it's phased in by age.
And then with one more question, the last one. If you said that Social Security is also with disability, so if you are on Social Security or even not, and then you become disabled, does that affect your payments in any way?
Well, it might depend on your age. Disability is paid as if you're already full retirement age.
Okay.
So, for example, somebody at age 30 became disabled, then they're drawing what they get if they work till 67, making about what they're making now. And so, since it's paid as if you're full retirement age, there's no such thing as disability after somebody reaches full retirement age.
Okay.
But let's say somebody started drawing at 62, reduced retirement benefits, and then became disabled a couple of months after that, it would be a higher check because it'd be based on the full retirement age amount. So they'd want to file for disability just to get that higher check.
What if they're 68?
Past full retirement age, it wouldn't make any difference. There's no such thing as disability
okay.
because they're already drawing as much as they can draw.
Increase. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Is the survivor benefit for children the same as a spousal benefit, or how does that work? So suppose the wife is on a spousal benefit and the husband dies and they have a child that's under 18.
Okay.
What is then, she starts getting his benefit. What does the child receive?
A surviving child gets 75% of his full amount, of his full retirement age amount. On a death case.
His own or his father's?
No, his father's, yeah.
Yeah. So boy, then she should bump off the guy if she's got a child, because that'd be a big raise, right?
Yeah. Now if she's convicted of that, she can't draw those benefits. But, but yeah. Yeah, like the kid, but a surviving child draws 75. Now, you have that family maximum, but if there's 2 people drawn, they wouldn't have reached it yet, so it wouldn't affect the benefits, yeah. So she'd go up to his amount, and the child gets 75% of his full retirement age amount.
I think I heard you say earlier something about Medicare is completely different animal than Social Security.
Which is a different program.
Different program, but you said you could potentially do that at 62.
No. As you'll see in just a minute, so Medicare's age is 65. It hasn't changed. It's Medicare age 65. But any other questions before I go into Medicare? Yeah, we got one over here in the corner.
Hi, I'm speaking on behalf of my boss. His wife and him were both 60 when she passed.
Okay.
And last year he asked me to check into survivor benefits. And I checked, and apparently he makes too much to draw that.
Right. Yeah, that earnings limit, that $21,240, that applies to widow's benefits just like it does to retirement benefits. But if he go at full retirement age, there's no limit. So he can start drawing, let's say his is higher, then he can start drawing hers at full retirement age and then get his keep going at 8% a year till 70.
That part we did not understand.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. It's just he's not yet full retirement age, that earnings limit. And actually, depending on when he reaches full retirement age, I'm assuming it's 67 for him, is he?
He's trying to retire every day.
Okay, well, if he retires before then, then he can start drawing the widows then, and then wait till 70 to draw his or full retirement age. So if he retires before full retirement age, he can start them then. Yeah, it's just that earnings limit applies to widow's benefits just like it does to your own retirement. Okay, Medicare. Now, what you're going to find is 2 things, very important things about Medicare. One, it is far more complicated than Social Security. And 2, it is much more important to get it right. You can't mess up too bad with Social Security. Maybe there's a strategy you could have used, and had you used it, you have a higher check today. But no matter what you do with Social Security, you still end up with this guaranteed lifetime benefit that goes up with inflation, with cost of living raises the rest of your life. So you can't mess up too bad with Social Security. With Medicare, if you don't have your Medicare in place properly, and you have a serious illness, you almost certainly will be bankrupt unless you're a multi-millionaire. And that's not exaggeration. You'd be amazed how many people I talk to that Medicare pays $1.5 million to $2 million in 1 year for one person. Half that is usually doctor bills, which is what we're talking about here, Part B, which covers doctor bills. If they didn't have a Part B in place, that would be half that $1 million, $2 million would be their bill to pay out of the pocket. So the most important thing to remember is once Medicare is your primary payer, once Medicare is paying first, you've got to have Medicare A and B in place. And I'll talk about what those are. What's that? Amen. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so first of all, Medicare's age is still 65 for everybody. It has not gone up. Medicare's age is still 65 for everyone. Also, somebody gets disability from Social Security after 2 years, they get Medicare. And there's a special Medicare program for people who have kidney failure. Somebody's having dialysis or a kidney transplant, even if they're still working, not drawing disability, they can get Medicare. The two basic parts of Medicare are Medicare Part A, Medicare Part B. Part A is the hospital insurance part of Medicare. People say Part A is free. Part A is not free. It's a matter of when we pay for it. We pay for Part A while we're working, so we don't have to pay for that once we are retired. If you look at your pay stub, if you're working right now, you see FICA tax is divided into two parts. 6.2% Social Security, 1.45% Medicare. And by the way, if you don't have 40 Medicare credits, that's a reason to get your 40 Social Security credits is for Medicare Part A, if not for nothing else. Okay? It's worth it just for that. The check's a bonus that you might get. So we pay for Part A. So as long as you qualify to draw a Social Security check based on your own work or your spouse's work, even if you're not drawing that check yet, Part A doesn't cost you anything once you're 65 and over and retire because you or your spouse paid for it while you were working. But Part A just pays the hospital bill itself when you're in the hospital. So doctor bills and outpatient treatment, those are paid for by Part B. And Part B is the one that has a premium. Most people pay $164 a month this year for Part B. Since Part B has that premium, it is a free country. You do have the legal right to turn down Part B. But don't write that down to the flip side of that coin. The flip side is it is a free country. You have the legal right to bankrupt yourself. Because once Medicare's paying first, and I'll talk about when it's not, because there is a time you don't want to take Part B. But once Medicare's paying first, and I'll tell you when that is, but once Medicare is the primary payer, you've got to have Part B in place. Because once Medicare's paying first, nobody else in the world will pay anything Medicare would pay for except Medicare. So once Medicare is your primary payer, you've got to have Medicare B in place and A. A lot of reasons you don't want to turn down Part B once Medicare is your primary payer. Number one, $164 a month's got to be a great deal, right? Anybody here want to start an insurance company and insure people from age 65 to 100 whatever for doctor bills? Of course not. That's only 1/4 the cost of the premium. The federal government pays the other 3/4. So every month somebody pays $164 for their Part B. For that same 1 month, for that same one person, the government paid $492 for their Part B. We pay 1/4, the government pays 3/4. Now, if somebody has income above $97,000 for an individual or $194,000 for a couple, they don't get the full 75% subsidy from the government, so they pay more than 1/4 the cost of Part B. And how much more they pay depends on how much their income's above $97,000 for an individual or $194,000 for a couple. But of course, Social Security has no idea how much income somebody has this year or even last year. So you always have to base that higher premium on the income 2 years before. So this year, that higher premium for Part B is based on the 2021 income. Next year on 22 income, and so on, always 2 years before. But if somebody's income has gone down in the last 2 years because they retired or became widowed, they can ask, they base that premium on their current income, not what they had 2 years ago. So if you and your spouse have good jobs, you retire, you file for your Medicare Part B, and then you get a letter saying, based on your income 2 years ago, we have to charge you this higher Part B premium, then be sure and call them up and tell them your income went down because you retired, because they don't know unless you tell them. Just your income going down since 2 years ago doesn't mean you don't have to pay the higher premium. Has to have gone down because of certain reasons they call life-changing events. Becoming widowed or retirement are the most common of those life-changing events, but there are a few others that don't apply as often. In the letter they send you, they say you have to pay that higher premium. They list all those possible life-changing events. If your income's gone down because of any of those reasons since 2 years ago, then call them up and tell them you don't have to pay that higher premium. Any questions about that? Yeah.
So you said Medicare age is 65 for everyone, and that obviously you get Part A at that point, but you said that you want to have Part B, which covers doctor bills and what?
Outpatient treatment.
Doctor bills and outpatients. By when?
Well, you want to have it once Medicare is your primary payer, and we'll see when that is in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, but once Medicare is paying first, you got to have it in place.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the second, yes.
Sorry, I have a question about widowers. Last year, my sister and her husband were both on Social Security. And last year, he died at 72. And she will be 70 this year. So how did that work for her?
Well, if his check was higher, she went up to his amount.
Okay. They both retired at 62, so they didn't do the full.
Yeah. So still, him taking, if he has the higher wage, or him taking it at 62 has reduced her widow's benefits also for the rest of her life. But she would have gone up to exactly his amount.
Okay.
If she wasn't drawing a pension based on work, not covered by Social Security anyway, then she went up to exactly his amount. And she would have, since she wasn't drawing on his record already, she would have had to apply for those widow's benefits. Hope she could apply.
Okay.
Make sure she did. But if she did, then her check went up to his amount.
Okay. Thank you.
The second reason you want to make sure you have Part B in place, once Medicare is your primary payer, once Medicare is paying first, this is the big one. Once Medicare is paying first, as I said, nobody else pay anything Medicare to pay for except Medicare. So if Medicare is paying first for this person, if they're the primary payer, and they didn't take Part B, then all the doctor bills are going to pay out of their pocket because nobody else is going to pay for it. That could be a lot of money in a very short period of time. People always talk to me about how much Medicare pays for them or their mother or father in 1 year, and it's quite often well over $1 million. The record so far for me was set one night in Plano. Got this point in my talk. A lady raised her hand and said, last year Medicare had paid $2.1 million for her mother in 1 year. That was over $1 million in doctor bills. Her mother had Part B, but if she didn't, that would have been her $1 million bill to pay because nobody else is going to pay for it once Medicare is your primary payer. I know somebody at Medicare paid $330,000 in 7 days. Half that was Part B cost, doctor bills. The third reason you want to make sure you have Part B in place once Medicare is primary, if somebody doesn't take Part B at the point Medicare becomes their primary payer, and then they realize, uh-oh, I've made a huge mistake, so I'm going to run down to Social Security to get my Part B back. When they get down to the office, they've got some good news for them, and they've got some bad news for them. The good news is, yes, they can get their Part B if they didn't take it when they should have, but the bad news is they can't get it back today. If someone does not take Part B when Medicare becomes their primary payer, then to get it back, they have to wait till the first 3 months of a later year to reapply for it. Then it wouldn't start till the month after they applied. So every year from January 1st to March 31st is a chance for people who made a mistake and didn't take Part B when Medicare became their primary payer to apply to get it. If they applied in January, to start February 1st. It starts a month after they apply. And their premium, that $164, will be 10% higher for each year they should have had Part B and didn't take it. That's not the problem, though. The danger is they get very sick before the next year's first 3 months of the year, and they have $1 million in doctor bills and no Part B to pay for it, right? So this is the only time you don't need Part B. This is the only time you don't need Part B. The only time Medicare does not pay first, the only time Medicare is not primary, the only time you don't need Part B is if when you turn 65, you are working for an employer of 20 or more employees covered by that employer's health insurance as an active employee.
That's the primary payer.
Then in that case, the employer has to pay first, Medicare second. So if you turn 65, you're working for an employer that has 20 or more employees, you've got their health insurance as an active employee, then while you're still working for that employer past 65, Medicare pays second. The employer's group insurance has to pay first. They have no option. It's federal law. Medicare does not force you to pay for Part B as secondary coverage. So that one situation, you can wait until you retire. You get something called a special enrollment period when you retire to file for your Part B. It'll start right away, no penalty. Works for your spouse too. If you're working for an employer with 20 or more employees, got their health insurance as an active employee, and you have your spouse on that insurance, and your spouse turns 65, that's the same as them working down there. Medicare is secondary for your spouse until you retire. They can wait till that point, get their Part B right away with no penalty. They get that same special enrollment period. That's the only time you don't need Part B. So if you retired from AT&T and got to keep their health insurance into retirement, but you're working for the electric company when you turn 65, you got to have Medicare A and B in place because you retired from where you had your health insurance, right? So you have to be, the only time you don't need Part B is you're covered by your spouse's active employment, employer of 20 more people, and you're covered by that employer's health insurance as an active employee. It's the only time you don't need Part B. You have a question over here? Any other situation, Medicare's primary, you got to have Part B in place. Right here.
Yeah, just to clarify, because I'm on my husband's insurance, so when I turn 65, I can just stay on the insurance.
That's right.
Okay,
As long as there's more
he's
than 20
working there.
or more employees there.
Okay, yeah, there is.
So as long as he's still an active employee,
Uh-huh.
then you don't need Part B until he retires.
Okay, thank you.
So let's take that situation. Let's say Medicare secondary. Medicare secondary because you're covered by your spouse's active employment for employ 20 more people. Should you ever take Part A when Medicare secondary? Should you ever take Part B when Medicare secondary? Let's take Part A. You might want to take Part A when Medicare secondary because it doesn't cost you anything. If you had an inpatient hospital stay, you'd have secondary coverage to the employer's group insurance on that hospital bill. Might pick up some of those costs. There's one situation, though, where you don't want to take Part A when Medicare secondary. That is, you have something called a HSA and want to keep putting tax-free money in that HSA. Now, an HSA is a health savings account. It is not your flexible spending that you lose at the end of the year. This is not that. You don't lose this money at the end of the year. To have an HSA, you have to have a high deductible health insurance. Then you get to put tax-free money in that HSA. The law says you cannot put tax-free money in an HSA once you are entitled to any part of Medicare. So somebody's working past 65 in Medicare secondary. If they had an HSA and they took Medicare Part A, they can't put any more money in that HSA. Now let's go a little further because the Medicare law is written 1965, decades before the law established HSAs. And when that happens, sometimes the laws aren't synced together perfectly and they're not here. The original Medicare law that still applies states that if somebody doesn't take Medicare Part A when they turn 65, then when they do file for either it or Social Security later, they will be entitled to Part A 6 months retroactive before the month they made that application. That's to protect people back then if they didn't know about Medicare, right? So if you don't take Medicare Part A because Medicare is secondary and you want to keep putting money in the HSA, you need to start making those HSA contributions 6 months before the month you apply for either Social Security or Medicare Part A because you will be entitled to it 6 months before that month. It's a law and nobody can stop that from happening. We have a question from online?
Yeah, the question is, does Medicare pay for any kind of care outside the United States?
No. So if you're gonna take a trip outside the United States, if you have your secondary coverage as some of the Medicare supplements called Medigap plans, some of them will cover emergencies outside the United States. The only time it covers something outside the United States is say that you were down on the border, had an accident, the nearest hospital for emergency room was in Mexico or Canada, that would be covered. You had an emergency and the nearest hospital you need to be taken to was across the border. Other than that, no, it's not covered outside.
So I've been told that whether you take Medicare Part A as a secondary payer or not, you still have to register for Medicare when you turn 65?
No. There's no way to register. There's no such thing as registering for it. You either apply for it or you don't.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's not true. No.
Okay.
So if Medicare is secondary, you don't need to do anything at all. You might want to take Part A, but you don't have to do anything until you retire if Medicare is your secondary payer, if you're working for an employer with 20 more employees.
Okay.
Yeah, you're covered by their health insurance.
All right, so I had a quick question about when to take it. So if my husband is still working when I turn 65 and I have insurance under him.
Working for an employer of 20 more people, right?
Correct,
Okay, yeah.
correct. So how do we make a decision whether or not I go on to Medicare or whether I stay on
Well, it
his
depends on,
insurance?
well, it depends on how much it's costing to stay on his health insurance.
Okay,
If
so
it's
is that
pretty
where I look at
cheap,
the
if-
164 and
Yeah, you know, you
decide
add the
whether-
cost up. Yeah, if it's pretty cheap, then, you know, you might
Then
want to
stay
stay
on
on
it.
it. If
Okay.
it's costing a whole lot, with some employers charge a whole lot for the spouse, then it might be worth it to
Right,
go
so
to
just look at the
something.
cost. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yep. Got one back over here, one right there on the way too.
This is in reference to the question that came from online. If I were to be out of the country and get sick, Medicare doesn't cover me anymore. How about the Medigap plans?
No, no, they don't cover anything. They only pay secondary to Medicare. So if Medicare doesn't cover something, they don't cover something.
Okay.
Now, in general,
So-
but they do have, as I said, but they do have, some of them do cover emergencies outside the United States. So you can make, if you're going to be traveling outside the United States and buying a Medigap plan, pick one of the plans that covers outside the United States, because they're all standardized. They don't get to make up their own Medigap plan. The insurance companies don't. Federal government has standardized plans, and certain of those standardized plans cover emergencies if you're on a temporary stay outside the country.
And you could always buy traveler's insurance?
Yeah, if you don't have something like that, you can buy traveler's insurance. Right, that's right, to cover for emergencies. Was there get one over here? Yeah.
Who else?
Can you use the money in an HSA account to pay your premiums for Part B?
I'm not a tax person.
You don't
I
know?
criticize
Okay.
people for not staying in their lane for Social Security, so I try to stay on my lane.
Okay.
So what I know about HSAs is what I told you.
Okay.
Only as applies to Medicare. It's a no answer. Somebody who knows. Not the Part B premium. Can you pay your Medigap premium out of it? Can you pay your, you can't pay your Medigap either. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Also, the law says if you're anybody 65 or over drawing Social Security, automatically has Part A. They can't turn it down. So you start drawing, if you're working past 65, you start drawing your Social Security for retirement age because there's no earnings limit. You will be entitled to Part A. If you have an HSA, you can't put any more money in that HSA. And the last thing is kind of small, but still you need to know. This concerns Medicare Part D, the one that covers prescriptions. The Part D law says when somebody turns 65, if they don't have what is called creditable coverage for prescriptions, and creditable means as good as Medicare Part D. So when somebody turns 65, if their coverage for medications is not as good as Part D's, then when they do get Part D when they retire later, they'll pay a higher premium for not having that as good a coverage. Well, to have an HSA, you have to have a high deductible health plan in the first place. That's automatically not as good as Part D because Part D doesn't have a high deductible. So if you do stay in a high deductible HSA plan past 65, you will pay a higher premium for your prescriptions once you do retire for the rest of your life. It's 1% higher for each month you didn't have that as good a coverage. That's not quite as bad as it sounds because it's 1% higher from Part D's basic premium, which is about $35 a month this year. But just be aware that is the case. Now, I do talk to a lot of high-income people particularly. They put the pinch to it, say, I'm going to save more in tax money by staying in my HSA the next couple of years till I retire. Then I'll pay a higher premiums for Part D, so they don't really care, but just realize that that will happen. So that's Part A when Medicare secondary. If you don't have a HSA, and Medicare secondary for you because you're working past 65 for the employer of 20 more people, cover the health insurance, you might as well take Part A because you have secondary coverage on a hospital inpatient stay. So if you don't have, if that situation and don't have a HSA, you might as well take Part A. Now, Part B. So the issue once again is Medicare secondary because you're covered by your or your spouse's active employment for an employer of 20 or more employees. Should you take Part D with Medicare secondary? And the answer is probably not. And this is why. As we all know, retiree insurance from employers has just about disappeared, right? You know, 30 years ago, most big corporations let their, even middle-sized corporations, let their retirees keep health insurance. They let them keep past 65 to pay secondary to Medicare. That's just about disappeared. So a lot of people who are working past 65, when they do retire and go on Medicare, then they're very likely to want to buy something called a Medigap insurance policy, also called a Medicare supplement. It's a private insurance product you buy to help pay what Medicare doesn't. So you're buying it from a private insurance company. Insurance companies like to sell health insurance to who? Healthy people, that's right. They don't really like to sell insurance to sick people, and I wouldn't either if I was them. So the protection built in for us as individuals, though, the government's got a protection built in for us. It's called a guaranteed issue right. The first 6 months you are entitled to Medicare Part B. If you go to an insurance company, you tell them, I want to buy your Medigap policy, you have a guaranteed issue right. The insurance company will not turn you down or charge you a penny more for that Medigap policy, no matter how sick you might be. But once you've been entitled to Part B for more than 6 months, they can turn you down or charge you whatever they want. So let's take somebody who might be tempted to pay for Part B as secondary coverage. So this person we're talking about is an active employee for an employer of 20 or more employees. They're covered by that employer's health insurance as an active employee, so Medicare secondary. But even though they're still an active employee, they've got a serious illness. They're having to go to the doctor several times a week. And every time they go, there's a copay on their employer's insurance. That has added up to be a lot of money every month. That person turns 65, they might think, well, I ought to take Part B. It'll pick up a lot of that out-of-pocket cost my employer's insurance isn't paying, and it might pick up a lot of that. But here's the danger. Let's say that person took Part B at age 65 because they wanted that secondary coverage. Then 3 years later, they retire. They've been entitled to Part B more than 6 months, haven't they? They've had it in place for 3 years. They go to buy that Medigap policy, they very likely will be turned down or charged a lot more because they're already sick. But if they'd waited until they retired in that special enrollment period to file for Part B, then they couldn't be turned down or charged anymore, no matter how sick they were. So that's the danger of taking Part B from Medicare secondary. That guaranteed issue right to be able to buy that Medigap policy no matter what is a very valuable thing. Don't waste it when you don't need it. You don't need it if when you're working past 65 keeping your employer's health insurance. You need it when you retire and lose that insurance. So that's why you don't want to take Part B from Medicare secondary, because you want to be able to buy that Medigap policy whenever you retire later and not be turned down or charged more. Any questions about that? Yes?
Is a Medicare Gap plan and a Medicare Advantage plan the same thing?
No, I'll talk about that in just a minute, but they are two different things. My last subject is going to be secondary coverage of Medicare. One last thing before I get to that, though, and that is, when do you file for Part B in that situation? So once again, the person didn't take Part B because we said they shouldn't, because they were still working for the employer with 20 or more people, covered by that employer's health insurance as an active employee, so Medicare was secondary. So now they're getting ready to retire. When should they file for their Part B? I'd encourage them to file about 2 or 3 months before they retire for their Part B, to give Social Security time to get the new Medicare card to them, showing they have Part B by the time Medicare becomes primary. But I did a personal consultation with somebody a few weeks ago. He didn't know he was retired. He got to work that morning and found out he was retired. So should that happen to you, or maybe you just, something happens in your personal life, you decide to retire all of a sudden, then be sure and file for Medicare when you work past 65 like that. Be sure and file for it at the very latest, file for Part B before the end of the month after retirement. For example, let's say somebody was 68 years old, Medicare's been secondary for them because they're still working. They're going to retire today, June the 3rd, or anytime in June. If they retired in June, Medicare becomes their primary payer midnight July 1st. So when you work past 65 like that in Medicare secondary, Medicare becomes primary the first of the month after retirement. So that guy retired at age 68 in June. July 1st, Medicare becomes primary. As long as they filed for Part B before the end of July, the month after retirement, it'd be retroactive back to July 1st. There'd be no gap in coverage. I always mention that because if you just go read the literature later, it says you have 8 months to file for Medicare Part B after you retire when you work past 65 like that. That special enrollment period lasts 8 months. I don't believe it lasts 8 months because I don't want anybody to have 1 second's gap in coverage. If that person retired at age 68 in June and waited till August, the second of that 8-month period to file for Part B, they're probably going to start till September 1st. They'd have 2 whole months without any coverage for doctor bills. I'd be afraid to get out of bed if that was me, right? So if you do work past 65 for Medicare secondary, at the very latest, file for Part B before the end of the month after retirement. And you do want secondary coverage to Medicare. You do want secondary coverage to Medicare. Because Medicare pays about 80% of the hospital and doctor bills. Well, 20% could be a lot of dollars, right? If Medicare paid $2.1 million, that I mentioned at the very start, for that lady's mother in 1 year, that's a lot of money Medicare paid. That's more than the whole extended family paid in total FICA taxes and their whole lifetimes all put together. But if that was 80%, means Medicare didn't pay over $400,000, which is still a whole lot of dollars to me. That's what you want, secondary insurance, to protect you that kind of catastrophic health event, which happens more often than you realize. 3 ways you can be protected against that kind of catastrophic event. One, some people in this room probably do have employers' health insurance still. You get to keep into retirement. If you do work for a school district, you work under TRS, they have health insurance for retirees. So a few people do have employers' insurance to get to keep into retirement and past 65 to pay secondary to Medicare. If your employer does offer that, check that out first, because that might be your best deal. A lot of times the employer's putting their own money into that to bring the cost down. If they're not, they still negotiate a group rate for you, which should bring the cost down. So check that out first. That might be your best deal. Most people no longer have that option, of course. So you don't have employers' retirees' health insurance. You have 2 other ways to limit your exposure out-of-pocket cost. One is you can stay with what they call original Medicare. Original Medicare means there's no network. You can go to any doctor, accepts Medicare anytime you choose. Medicare pays first. You buy that Medigap policy we mentioned from the insurance company to pay second. Other options, you join a Medicare Advantage plan. It's like a Medicare HMO. If you join a Medicare Advantage plan, Medicare pays that plan a lot of money to give you all your Medicare services. The way that limits your exposure out-of-pocket costs is in a Medicare Advantage plan, you pay the same copay for a hospital stay or a doctor visit, whether it costs $100 or $10,000, you pay the same copay. But it's managed care. You have to stay within their network, go to their doctors, their hospitals. Now here it gets very complicated. You go back over here to original Medicare, buy that Medigap policy. They have standardized plans set by the government. So Medigap policy plan A, Medigap policy plan B, C, D, E, F, G, a bunch of them. Over here with Medicare Advantage, since you live in the 4th largest metro area in the country, every insurance company sells at least one Medicare Advantage plan here. Some sell more than one. Last count I saw was over 40 Medicare Advantage plans being offered in the DFW area. The best one for you may not be the best one for your spouse unless your diagnosis and medications are exactly the same. Then Part D for prescriptions. Back over to the original Medicare. If you stay with the original Medicare, you need to buy a standalone Part D plan for your medications. Over here with Medicare Advantage, most of them include Part D. That's part of how deciding which one's best for you is which one's going to cover your medications the best, along with everything else they do. Now, if you want to do this all yourself, and I don't recommend it, if you want to do this all yourself, at Medicare's website, which is medicare.gov, medicare.gov, they have something called a plan finder. But I don't recommend you use it. It's a lot of user error. It's kind of complicated. I say use the experts. In this modern world, everybody's an expert on one thing and totally ignorant of everything else, right? There are no more jack of all trades in this world. It's way too complicated. That's why you use your financial advisors. That's why I'm here talking about this. But don't ask me anything about Social Security or Medicare because I don't know, right? We're an expert on everything, on one thing, but we're totally ignorant of everything else. So use the experts here to help you pick your best Medicare plan. What Medicare has done is they have trained people that work at nonprofit agencies in all the Medicare and health insurance rules. They pay these nonprofit agencies to have these people out there to provide at no cost to us help with Medicare planning. They can help you choose whether to go with original Medicare or Medicare Advantage. Once you make that choice, help you pick your best plans, help you pick your best Part D plan. And the best way to find them is just to dial 211. Everybody knows what 911 is. 211's been around a long time now, but people just don't know about it. It's not a Medicare number, it's for any social service information. Dial 211, they'll get you in touch with the agency you need to. So when the time comes, just dial 211, say you need help with Medicare planning. They'll get you in touch with Medicare trained professionals, help you decide where to go with Medicare, with original Medicare, Medicare Advantage, help you choose your best plans, help you pick your Part D plan. They do a great job. They're very well trained by Medicare. I used to help train them when I worked at Social Security. And they're on straight salary, no commission, so the only job is to get you in the best plan. They're very underutilized, in my opinion. So to use them, they're very well trained. They're the experts. They do this all day, every day, and they are local. Both those make a big difference in making the best decision for you. And that's all I have prepared for you. Any other questions going back to Social Security? Any other Medicare questions? Yes.
This is just a curious thing. Do people like Warren Buffett and Boone Pickens pay into Social Security and make a claim against it?
They usually do draw it, and they almost always donate it to charity. It's confidential, but I've taken some applications from people, not them, but like that, and everyone I've seen just automatically donates that amount to charity, because it doesn't make any difference to Social Security. There's so few of them. It doesn't make any difference to Social Security if they draw it or not, but it makes a big difference to the charity they send the money to. So, yes, got one here too.
I'm finding that a lot of doctors are not taking Medicare.
Fewer and fewer. Fewer and fewer because doctors don't take Medicare, losing 15,000 patients every single day. 15,000 of us go on Medicare every day. A bunch of us baby boomers. I've been saying it's going to happen for a long time, and it's happening now. This lady the other day at a seminar I was doing, this lady said she had a cardiologist on North Central in Dallas, and 6 months before she turned 65, she got a letter from him saying, "We don't take Medicare, you have to find another cardiologist." She called him back and said, "You must not look at the age of the people in your waiting room." She said, "You're going to lose all your patients if you don't take Medicare." Apparently it had occurred to them. 2 weeks later, she got a letter saying, "We are now taking Medicare, please stay with us." And by the way, the idea of not taking Medicare is only in certain pockets of the country, very small pockets. In the whole Metroplex, it was here, North Dallas area basically, and West Fort Worth, far West Fort Worth, the richest parts of the Metroplex. Not an issue anywhere else. Okay?
That's
So
interesting
what
to
you see
know.
here is not what the whole world sees.
Good.
And
Okay,
everywhere
thank
else in the Metroplex, people love Medicare patients because they're insured. Good insurance. They're going to get paid. But that's disappeared even in those areas because, like I say, 15,000 people are turning 65 every day going on Medicare. Yes.
My sister is 49 now. She was 48 last year, and she suffered a catastrophic stroke.
Okay.
And she did put in at least her 10 years of work. She has 2 children under 18, and I am trying to figure out how to get her. I don't even know where to begin first. Do I tackle, now she's not working, do I tackle Medicaid and then Social Security, or?
Well, probably Social Security if she's been working recently. Now, disability has a recent work requirement also.
Oh. Okay.
And so she would have had to pay into Social Security 5 out of the 10 years before she became disabled also.
Okay.
If she did that, though, she needs to apply for disability.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so it's the only one that has a recent work requirement. But if she did work half the time in the 10 years before she became disabled, she needs to apply.
Okay.
Because it's time consuming to get all the medical records and make that decision.
Absolutely.
She needs to apply right away.
Okay.
And it sounds like unless she's getting better from a stroke, sounds like that she'd probably meet the requirements.
Yeah, she's not able to do anything.
Yeah,
so.
and really, it probably didn't hurt her to wait to file now, and this is why. When somebody has a stroke, usually the doctors cannot say at all for at least 6 months to a year if they're going to recover and how much they're going to recover. So a lot of times, Social Security has to actually wait 6 or 8 months before they even can look at the situation because nobody knows how long they're going to recover. So it probably hadn't delayed her much by waiting until now to file, but she definitely needs to apply now.
Okay, thank you.
You said at 65, do you automatically start getting Part A, or do you have to apply for it?
Well, no, the only time Medicare is automatic, the only time you don't have to apply for it is if you're already drawing Social Security. If somebody's already drawn Social Security before age 65, then in that one situation, they're entitled to Medicare automatically. They get the Medicare card sent to them about 6 weeks early, and the card they send automatically has both Part A and Part B on it.
So if you start drawing at 62, then you're automatically
enrolled in A and
Part
B, you automatically enrolled in A and B.
Oh, A and
Just keep
B.
the card they send you, automatically enrolled in both parts.
But then if you're 66 and you...
Yeah, but let's say that you're retired, Medicare's going to be your primary payer because you're retired when you turn 65, but you're wanting to wait till 70 to take your Social Security. Then you can file for Medicare only at age 65, file for your A and B only without filing for Social Security at that point.
Okay.
Then file for your Social Security later.
So then you have to file. So at 62, you don't have to file. You just automatically get it, the Part A and B?
Yeah, if you start drawing before 65, then you automatically get Medicare automatic. That's the only time it's automatic, though.
This has happened to us a couple of times. Our Medicare supplement is from a company that nobody has heard of.
Oh, okay.
And I've even had them tell me, well, we don't know if we can, and I'm like, we can accept this. I'm like, but you have to, by law, you have to. So I just think it's important that we know that they don't know. But
Right.
that
Yeah,
they
sometimes
have
the
to.
doctor's offices don't know what they're required to do.
Yeah.
They also are required to file the Medicare claims. They can't say you got to file it. The doctor's also
Right.
required to file Medicare
Right.
claims too.
Right.
Yeah. Here's one right here.
I get an annual mailing from Social Security, which analyzes the amount that I'm entitled to, and there's a deduction for my Medicare Part A, Part B.
Part B,
You,
premium.
you pointed out.
Yeah.
And that's a premium.
Right.
My Medicare Advantage, which is added on top of that, advertises itself as premium equals $0.
Right.
Those are two different premiums.
That's right. Yes.
Some Medicare Advantage plans could have an additional premium
That's
based
right.
on what their
Right.
offerings are.
You can't even take a Medicare Advantage plan or buy a Medicare supplement, a Medigap policy, unless you have both Part A and Part B. So that's separate. But then in some areas, your Medicare Advantage might charge a small premium. They don't here because of the competition. A huge metro area, right? But if you go west, like 40 different companies, Medicare Advantage companies here vying for your business. That's why there's no premium, that competition. But if you go out to West Texas, where in some counties maybe one or two, you might pay a $15 or $20 premium for one because you don't have that competition. Yeah.
Okay, so my question isn't a Medicare question. My situation is I just turned 62. I work 2 part-time jobs, one where we pay in Social Security, and the other one I work for a school district, and all they pay in is the teacher retirement.
Okay.
So what would be the best thing for me to do? We're thinking return from the job that pays Social Security and still do the other job for the teacher retirement.
Well, kind of what you want to do is look to see if you're looking, what's going to give you the most, what's going to increase your retirement income the most between the two if you don't want to do both of them any longer. So you could look and see how much each year of work would increase your TRS pension, and then look to see how much that work might increase the Social Security check, which I don't know how you would do that other than
I
hiring
can't
me,
draw
but-
both at the same time, right?
Yeah, of course you can. People do all the time. Remember what we said? He asked about at the start, if you have your 40 credits, you'll draw your own Social Security, you'll draw TRS. Remember we also saying that everything you ever heard at the school district about Social Security is wrong? Maybe I didn't say that. Did I say that?
Say that again.
Everything you ever heard about Social Security and Medicare at the school is wrong.
Okay.
Okay, there have no exceptions to that rule. In 40 years, I haven't found a single exception to that, about the ed.
Well, I was talking to a retired teacher who
Yeah.
also subs at the district.
Yeah.
And she said that they made her do the teacher retirement, and she couldn't do her Social Security.
Well, she doesn't have her 40 credits. Yeah, now, part of a teacher retirement does offset benefits on a spouse's record. That might offset to zero.
Okay.
But if she had her 40 credits, she'd be drawing her own Social Security. Yes.
And that.
See, they want to apply their situation universally to everybody, see.
Okay.
So nobody ever told her you can't draw one or the other. She interpolated that from the fact she couldn't draw Social Security, but couldn't draw Social Security because she doesn't have her 40 credits.
Got
see.
it. Okay.
Any others?
Sorry. So I'm on disability right now, disability and Medicare. What happens when I reach full retirement age?
When you reach full retirement age, it's paid as if you're already full retirement age. So nothing changes as far as you're concerned. Your amount stays the same. You already have Medicare.
Mhm.
Your amount stays the same. It's just that there's a retirement trust fund and a disability trust fund. They start taking your check out of this checking account instead of that checking account, basically at that point. But it's exactly the same amount of money.
Okay.
So you don't see the difference. You have a question online?
We have an online question. Pam Winesapple, can you clarify? She said, for me, you keep saying limited income, but at retirement age, it goes away. In our experience, it never goes away, and the requirement at 71.5 disbursement each year counts as our income.
But they're not talking about Social Security there. We're talking about their deferred retirement accounts. And I don't know if you want to address that or.
Yeah, maybe she'll write back, but,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't
okay.
know. I don't think I ever said limited income either, did I? Yeah, earnings limit. I said, yeah, that's true. I mean, she's asked about that. Well, thank you all for your attention. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Tom, your experience really shined through this morning. So
Yeah.
thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks for asking the questions. That's a lot more.
Who learned something today? Who learned more than one thing today? Wonderful. This is exactly the response we were hoping for. Tom, your presentation was outstanding. So we thank you so much. Yes, yes, yes. It really shined. Look, we've talked about Social Security retirement. We've talked about Social Security disability. We talked about delayed retirement credits. Medicare A through Z. And the list goes on and on and on. You guys need help. We have answers. Use the resources that are available to you. Randy and myself are a resource. Tom is a resource. We'll probably ask that you work through Randy and I to get to Tom, if you will, but he's very accessible. 211 is a resource. I did not know that as just another resource. The official government websites, socialsecurity.gov, medicare.gov are resources. Your third cousin twice removed is not a resource.
Yeah.
They're not. They're not. Even if they retired and are claiming this, that, or the other, they're not a resource. They have great intentions, most of them, but they're not resources. And so use those resources that are available to you. If you don't know Randy and I, come up and introduce yourself to us. We're happy to share our contact information. And then ultimately, if we can't help you, we will send you over to Tom. He does do the consulting as a self-employed expert. We thank you all on behalf of Randy, myself, Gabriel Clava. We thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your attention, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Tom?
We have an online question. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I think there's a follow-up here.
She was talking for income tax, the earning limit.
Okay, yeah, that's a different thing. Income tax is different. I don't know if this is on there or not.
It's on.
Okay. So income tax is separate. That earnings limit is just you're not due some benefits. It's not a tax. No matter what age is, your benefits hopefully are subject to income tax. People ask me, will I pay income tax on my Social Security? My answer is always, I hope so. Because if you don't, that means you're not living on very much income. If your income's above $25,000 for an individual or $32,000 for a couple, then you will pay income tax on part of your Social Security. How much is taxable depends on how much your income is above $25,000 for an individual or $32,000 for a couple. Two things different from this income tax and the other income tax you pay. One is where the money goes. Any income tax paid on Social Security goes back to the Social Security and Medicare trust funds. That $3 trillion surplus I told you, almost $3 trillion surplus trust funds have, about 20% of that is income tax paid on Social Security. Congress in the 1980s passed a bunch of laws to bring in a bunch of extra money for us baby boomers to draw down. So the tax is going to go up for our kids a whole bunch. Income tax paid on Social Security is part of that package of laws they passed. They did a good job too. Like I said, $3 trillion is a lot of money. And the other thing is, no matter how much your income is, at least 15%, 15% are tax-free. Might be more, but for Bill Gates, 15% of benefits are tax-free. This is how that figure was arrived at. For the average person living the average lifespan, the amount of total benefits they receive based on their own contributions, their own taxes, is 15% of the total they receive. You pay tax on that when you're working, so there's no double taxation. Is that it? Okay. Well, thanks again. Once again, thanks again.
Okay, with that, we're all done. Have a wonderful day.